Hello and welcome to the official podcast of Palate Exposure, featuring Ilona Thompson, a podcast for those seeking the ultimate in wine, food, and travel. Each week she interviews winemakers, chefs, celebrities, and a variety of guests that shape the way we enjoy life.
Hello, Ilona Thompson here with Palate Exposure. We're interviewing today a gentleman whose career fascinated me. And I've had an opportunity to have a few chats with him, and I know you guys are in for a treat. He has a fantastic backstory and really learned, informed, and passionate point of view on all things wine, not just what he happens to make. His name is Faury, and he is a winemaker for Crown Point Vineyards. So as I like always to start from the beginning, so the beginning is, where are you from? Where were you born? We figured that you're French, but there's a lot more to that story. Yes, always. So tell me more. Tell me where it all began.
Well, it's a long journey. It's been a long journey for me, for sure. But I'm originally from Northern Rhone. My family's from there. I grew up in the area for a while, and when I fell in love with wine, I decided to go to Italy, go to Barolo area, went to university there, got my degree there, worked in a few different places over Barolo in Sicily. And I thought it'd be weird for a French guy to not have a French degree. So I went to Bordeaux after that and got a degree in winemaking and viticulture at the University of Bordeaux. I worked in a few different places in Bordeaux: Cru Classé, Domaine de Chevalier, and Château Pichon-Longueville in Pauillac. And after that, I met a few very interesting people, such as Michel Roland, and talked about what to do next. And for me, next was traveling. I caught the travel bug in Italy, and I wanted to keep going that route. And it came kind of the idea of going to California. That was in 2010. I came to work for Robert Mondavi Winery for Harvest. Really enjoyed it. After that, I went to Australia in the Yarra Valley, worked for a place called Cahilton. And it's kind of funny because I applied for a job one morning, and that was for one of the wineries of the Harlan estate group, at the time, the Napa Valley Reserve. And kind of totally randomly, not knowing what it was, I got the job, and I came again, or I came back to Napa one more time. I remember doing the interview was on a Saturday morning, with the time difference in Australia. I was hangover, and I still got the job. So it's kind of fun. And which makes me think I've done too many job interviews where I was hangover, and I've always been very successful. So maybe there's something to be said there. It either works well because you talk less, or maybe I'm just too hangover all the time, and that needs to stop. So sorry about that, everyone. But yeah, and I came back to Napa one more time, and I've always wanted to work for Michel Roland. And after that, I got the chance and opportunity to go and work for him in Argentina, in Mendoza, for a little while. And after doing all this, kind of a long journey, someone put a good word for me at Harlan Estate, and I was able to come back and work for a good chunk of the year at Harlan Estates. That was before meeting the owners at Merryvale that offered me the job of winemaker there at Merryvale Vineyards in Napa, and take over the program. So I've been in Napa for a while, and recently with Harvest 2019, I came to Santa Barbara to start making wine here at Crown Point Vineyards. I've always been very, very curious and interested, of course, about Santa Barbara because I love the ocean. I surf, and I've always found Santa Barbara fascinating. mostly also because most of it is planted with Syrah. And coming from Northern Rhone, I always keep a very strong interest for Syrah, and got me curious about Santa Barbara. And down the road, this opportunity came and worked here, and we make Cabernet, so nothing to do with Syrah. We are quite a outlier, I think, for the area, but we're very passionate about what we do, and we think we've got something magical here. So, anyways, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. That's quite a story. And I made a mental note to practice this great advice, which is being hangover more. That's the path I'm leaning towards, because clearly it worked well for you. I haven't practiced it enough. So there you go, guys. This is free advice that works so well, because your career clearly has been on the fast track.
Well, maybe because it's harder to say something, you say less of the superfluous things. So you kind of had more content to what you're saying. Who knows?
No, I'm that's my biggest takeaway. No kidding, of course. It's a very impressive history. I mean, first of all, hailing from Northern Rhone, which is an iconic destination for all things Syrah and Grenache, and being surrounded by that, I would imagine, since birth.
There are not so many people from Northern Rhone, too. It's a very small wine region.
Mm-hmm. And then you decided to venture into the greater world and find yourself in Italy, which is like an extraordinary kaleidoscope of all things native varieties. They probably have more native varieties than France has cheeses, right?
That's true.
And being exposed to that, symphony of everything, and having that background that you deliberately chose for yourself, because you could have probably gone an easier route. And then you went to the University of Bordeaux. You could have probably stuck around there and worked at the wineries, there's plenty to do there. But you seem to have this almost nomadic spirit when you need to experience other things and test other waters. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we talked about that last time. Yeah, I don't know. I get it's a blessing and a curse, I think I get bored after a little while if I'm not if I'm stuck somewhere, maybe. But that's very good. Yeah. I've always felt like I needed to explore, discover new things, find my own route, and that applies also to winemaking. Find our own way to make wine. And I think for the longest time, I was very attracted about the idea of being a pioneer, being the first one in one area and trying to understand how to grow the grapes, how to make the wines, and kind of blaze the trail that way. Now with, a few more years behind me, I love the idea of making wine from a very famous cru single vineyard somewhere in Burgundy or in Northern Rhone, and try to confront myself with hundreds of years of different wines and vintages and winemakers, and try to, maybe put something out there. It's just a thought. I've never done it. I'm not even sure it's going to happen one day. But now that this has more appeal to me now than it did in the past.
It's really interesting. Clearly, your past journeys, the hallmark of it is wanderlust, and you just described this restlessness within you. Do you know where it comes from? Is it something that you have learned about yourself early on in your childhood, young adulthood, or what is the origin of that?
I don't know. I think the origin could be, I think I just want to make wine. I just love to make wine, and the more different wines I make, the happier I am. Only if they're good, though. And I just look forward to making new wines every year. So there's part of that. Then growing up, my family and I traveled a lot, and so maybe that's part of this too. I know that you can move to different places and you can do new things there, and you can succeed, and that could be part of the energy out there. But yeah, I think I'm just really curious about things too. And I'm really curious about what the next vintage is going to be about and what those wines will have to say. So kind of all that good stuff all together.
Yeah. So you've clearly worked in several countries, and each, wine region, or regions in your case, have had very unique, contributions to your winemaking mind. What were some of
Yeah.
the biggest takeaways? Let's start with Argentina, with Mendoza. What was that like?
What was it like? That was a long harvest. That was a long harvest with, picking fruit. It's a different season, right? Over there, it's in our winter, so that would be the equivalent of picking fruit up till the end of November. It was like, or mid-November, every day since September 1st. So very extended and high pace harvest the whole way, but an incredible, I think, dedication and attention to details from start to finish. There was no giving up on that, which was amazing to witness. And from the first cluster till the last we entered, the level of quality and dedication was second to none, and that is inspiring to me because when I get tired, I often look back at what we did that year, and and it pushes me to keep going. So that was the main thing out there that I remembered. Then it's funny because every country and every places I worked was somewhat different. Australia, for example, I think I discovered a lot. I matured a lot being there. Um, we made wines that, sorry guys, if you're listening, we made some really good wines. And we made a lot of wines that I would not, they were still good, but I would not enjoy. And I think I learned part of the industry that I don't connect with so much, which is more of a lower end wine, more of a framed wine. So you do corrections into the lab rather than the vineyard. And that's not really my philosophy, but you know what? I'm glad I witnessed it. I'm glad I was part of it and I learned from it. I also learned that I don't like it, which is a good thing. I mean, yeah, but I don't like it. It doesn't resonate with me. That's what I mean. And but a lot of very very good wines in Australia on family-owned small wineries. Uh, with a lot of focus on vineyard sites, on terroir, if you want. They make beautiful wines with very strong personality. So learn from that. That was very interesting. And in Napa, throughout the years, I focused a lot on high-end wines, which I've always done, but with no compromise approach. We're really gonna go all in best we can. Everything has to be perfect. There's not one imperfect berry that's going to get into that tank, and then everything we do is to the highest level, and then that is what I enjoy and what I really connect with at the end of the day.
It's really an interesting observation. Napa, of course, has become known as one of the world's foremost regions, to grow grapes as well as wine production, and also to a certain extent marketing. I mean, direct to consumer model really is prevalent for the US and not the rest of the world. So you get direct feedback. It's a very intimate relationship.
Yeah, I was recently in Bordeaux before the COVID, and I haven't been in Bordeaux for 10 years. After college, I left and I kind of got busy doing other things. And I came back to work on some terroir studies for a few weeks while being at Crown Point. And very interesting. I went to the old places where I used to work. Very interesting to notice the attention now they have to direct to consumer, to what they call the tourism to some extent. Things have changed a lot since my old days out there. Still a lot to improve, and everybody has something to improve for sure. But they're putting some effort and being aware of it, no doubt.
That's really interesting. In a mere decade, things have dramatically changed in terms of awareness of what you're describing. That's really cool. I'm hoping that, wine tourism is such a extraordinary, phenomena that brings a lot of dollars to the wine country, that I think paying close attention to it and developing it is really important.
No doubt.
During your years in Napa, what were your observations? I know that there's a lot of things that are being done meticulously, and, major capital investment and, search for perfectionism. Was there anything missing? Was there anything that stood out to you that, really could use improvement, or, more finesse? Anything?
Yeah, there is, and I think it's very interesting for everybody, coming from the old world. For me, Napa lacks a little bit of authenticity. I can say authenticity.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, I got too much wine. It's not really, it could be a little bit more authentic, and that is because it's new, because it's a new area. But having a little bit more wine culture out there. We're here for the wine, to enjoy the wine. What I really enjoy about Napa is the diversity of terroirs. You can make wines from different areas, and they're going to taste completely different, and the way you're going to make them will be different as well. Very modern industry, very, very dynamic. A lot of good things are happening. It's a model for a lot, if not all, other wine regions in the world. But along the way, we kind of lost a little bit of what the wine culture is about, about sharing, about real hospitality, about being true, about being humble as well, and I think if you're able to achieve that, then you're really on top of the world. Adding an experience that is not only about taking your money, but also about living to the fullest, and sharing, really that great passion that we all have for wine. So being a little bit more authentic, I think, is great. But it also takes time. And it's a young wine region, so it's a little bit negative what I'm saying, and I'm sorry. But what I love about Italy is that you go to Tuscany, you go to Umbria. I mean, those places, they've got something special. Even the wines are not necessarily always special, but they're always fun. There's always something, that goes beyond. And so if Napa could tap a little bit into that, that'd be great.
I don't think it's negative at all. I think actually it's a very healthy discourse to have. Napa grew up very fast, and it started out with such a generous spirit of hospitality. I'm referring to Mondavi, of course.
Yeah. And you know what I enjoy about Santa Barbara is that it's there. Santa Barbara is very authentic. In California has a special place. Santa Barbara County is like that. The vintners are most of them first generation. They've got that passion. They are present in the vineyard and in the tasting room, and they're the direct makers, and it's laid back. It's fun. It's very interesting. It's great to be part of that.
Oh, I can only imagine how energizing that is. I mean, direct to consumer connection, I think it's paramount to success of any wine brand. And the communication, of course, a lot of it was in person through the point of sale, the tasting rooms, and now with COVID, that's all changing rather rapidly. It's becoming virtual. But those wineries have built those strong relationships with consumers are clearly faring better than those that didn't. And that's a hugely teachable moment right there. The fact that Santa Barbara, of course, I mean, it's a different animal altogether geographically, and the hospitality has to be impacted by, the fact that it's accessible, the land is not as expensive. So, the tasting fees are different, the personnel is different in the tasting room. And that participation of the owner, that hands-on and being present, is really, really important. Santa Barbara, of course, got a pretty big push from the movie We Never Want to Talk About, called Sideways. But I think they really took and ran with what wasn't even the wine movie in the first place. It, of course, popularized Pinot Noir. But I think what it also did is that it brought a lot of attention to a region. And what's happening with a lot of producers is that now that they have access to more resources, they're also elevating the wine production piece of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're attracting talent such as yours. Speaking of talent, you've worked with Michel Rolland amongst other mentors. What were some of the biggest lessons that you've learned from Michel?
Well, what I like about Michel is that, he's very humble. Despite being who he is, he makes sure that at the end of the day, we'll get in his car and he'll take us back home and he'd give us a ride and, make sure that we had anything we needed to keep going. That I love, and I think also if there's one thing you'd remember from him is that in the end it's all about the sensitivity. It's all about, there's something in wine that you cannot draw a formula, an algorithm that would make it work, but it's about the sensitivity, and this is the difference between a good wine and an exceptional wine. There's something in the exceptional wine that you cannot really describe. There is the emotion that is out there, and the emotion you cannot really build it. You have to use the sensitivity to make it work. It's like a piece of music. You could play a score really well, the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven, if you want. You could play the notes right, you could play the rhythm right, but there's something that if you add the emotion into it, or whatever piece of music you could think of, then it's a whole different opera and a whole different piece. So with wine it's the same thing. You can have good grapes, you can do it right, you can be on time, and you can do everything good. But then at the end of the day, you might be missing something. And I think it's also why it is so hard to go from good to great, in wine business, because it's hard to get the right timing and the right sensitivity for everything. And that's something that we aspire every year after year, is like we aspire to make the best possible wine, the perfect wine, as they say.
So would it be fair to say that he has any kind of superhuman abilities? I think I know the answer, but I just want to hear from you. Clearly, he's known for his palatal prowess, but what you're describing is very different, actually. You're describing the intuition, sort of the gut level, when he knows when things are right, that may have been derived from multitude of data points.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of experience, no doubt. I think, when I was in Bordeaux last month, 2 months ago, a friend of me told me, it's like, yeah, you can, he comes, he does it, it's done. And then you can spend the whole afternoon trying to redo it and whatnot. You won't beat his blend. And it's true that the fun part of this is, like, I imagine my friends trying to redo the blends of 100 different ways and not being able to achieve the same blend and just as good as he did. So it's kind of really fun. And I'm sure that this happens more than we think.
it's got to be a little intimidating just in the sense that someone makes it look so easy, and they can't be. There has to be so many components and hands together to
I
achieve.
don't think it is intimidating. You know, I think at this point, he's one of the best out there. And, you know, for the young folks like me, it's just wonderful to be able to witness that and learn from it. You know, it's just tremendous opportunity. And, you know, it's just like you're you know, if that ever happens, you're playing tennis with Roger, or you know, you're seeing Grace, you know, in one way or another.
So if you were to make your own wine, which I suspect someday might happen, um,
Which I've done already.
you have.
Yeah.
How do I know about that? No one tells me nothing. What is it called?
It's called Domaine Faury. Well, it's my own wine just because it has my name on it. Pinot Noir from Sonoma Coast. I started making in 2016 and 2017. Just has my name on it, but you know, every wine I make or have been involved with, it's been the same for me. You know, I don't put my name on the label, but I sign it in one way or another. So um, so I try to be as proud as all of them, even if it has my name on it or not.
So is it available? Is commercially?
It's available. It's available. It turns out it's good too. So that's
I'm going to
that's
put
nice.
your website name so that we can tell the folks where they can acquire it.
And yeah, it's domainfaurygros.com. So like my last name, FAURYGROS.com.
Got it. Well, I'll be the first one checking it out right after we finish this podcast because now I'm immensely curious. Sonoma Coast is one of my favorite places on the planet. So, yes, very, very.
I wanted to make a Pinot that, you know, focusing mostly on cab. I wanted to make Pinot for fun. And I'm from Northern Rhone, but most of my friends are in Burgundy. My parents live in Burgundy now. And when you're in Burgundy, you taste wines. You know, Pinots are tannic. And you can taste the Pinot after a Bordeaux. You can taste the Burgundy, actually. I shouldn't say Pinot. You can taste the Burgundy after a Bordeaux, and vice versa. Go back and forth all night. And those wines you drink with steak. So they're full on, you know, reds. And I wanted to see that because I thought that Pinot in California most of the time is a little too gentle. It's a little too polite, and I'm not like that. And so I wanted to have something that had a little bit more, a little meaner, if you know what I mean.
It's really interesting. So, what's your fruit source, may I ask?
It's from a friend's vineyard called Seabird Ranch. They're amazing people, and I was kind of stumbled into it. It was almost dry farm, you know, very minimal intervention type of vineyard, and it works really well. There's something there that is hard to describe. It's like there's the power, but there's also the finesse, and then I love the vineyard. We stopped making it because in 2017 was the last vintage. We picked it a couple weeks before the fires, and the fires just came and tore the vineyard apart. So there was no more vineyard for a few years, but I think they're slowly starting to replant some blocks here and there. It's too bad because it's a small family-owned vineyard, and you know, those guys were very motivated and about their vineyard and cared for it. You know, and it's too bad it's gone. So they suffered from that. But a lot of people have suffered, and you know, they'll be back stronger.
Absolutely. No, we certainly in California have experienced a lot of awful issues. I mean, we're very blessed. It's a beautiful state with a lot of good weather, but once we get hammered by fires, it's just devastating.
It's interesting. You know, actually, I learned a lot from the fire 2017, and it's something that has impacted me a lot today in the winemaking. Is
The conclusion of this interview can be found in the next podcast, already available for your download. Thanks again for tuning in to the official podcast of Palate Exposure, featuring Ilona Thompson.